Strange, isn't it? How a person can spend years working hard, doing everything they believe is right, only to find out their body has been slipping away, silently, without a single alarm loud enough to notice. You wake up, stretch, sip your coffee, check your messages, and in the background, something inside you has already started to drift off course. Not loudly, not with sirens, just a little more tired than usual, a little more lightheaded when you stand, a little more forgetful. As if the mind itself is sighing beneath the weight of years. But you don't think much of it, because life doesn't stop. There's always something to do, someone to care for, bills to pay, goals to chase. So you keep going, telling yourself, it's probably nothing. Maybe you just need more sleep. But what if I told you that for millions of people, those small signs, the ones brushed off with a smile and a stretch, are not just aging. They're the earliest warnings, subtle, steady, and dangerously quiet. Stroke doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives like fog over a road. You only realize how far you've veered once it's too late to steer back. I've seen it in patients who looked fine, spoke clearly, walked normally, laughed with their families. And then, one morning, they couldn't lift a fork or remember their child's name. You see, stroke isn't always sudden. It can begin years before the event, through patterns we live by, habits we carry like second skin, choices so small. They seem harmless until they're not. It's like a clock in an old train station, off by just a second a day, but over time, you start missing every train, every opportunity for alignment, every gentle warning the body whispered, now swallowed by routine. And that's what this is about. Not fear, not shame, not regret, just awareness, the kind that lets you sit quietly and ask, am I living in a way that my future self would thank me for? Because there are habits, 5 of them in particular, that I've seen show up again and again in the quiet backgrounds of stroke patients. Habits that wear the body down, not all at once, but like soft rain against stone, unrelenting, unnoticed, and no, this isn't about being perfect, it's about being awake. Even just enough to notice when your body is asking for something gentler, something slower, something real. You might not see it in the mirror, but your blood vessels see it. Your heart feels it. Your brain, that silent command center, endures it. And when the day comes that one artery clogs, or a tiny clot travels just far enough to block a message from brain to body, it's rarely the first sign. It's often the last straw, in a pattern that began years ago. So I ask you, gently, when was the last time you paused, not just to rest your legs, but to really listen, to the rhythm inside your chest, to the quiet throb behind your eyes, to the way your breath rushes after a short flight of stairs? There's a language to the body, and if you listen carefully, you'll find it's been speaking to you all along. Maybe it's time to learn that language again, before the silence grows too loud to ignore. In the next part, we'll begin looking at the first habit, the one that feels the most harmless, yet carries the heaviest cost. But for now, just sit with this, not because someone told you to worry, but because you still have time. You probably don't even call it stress anymore. It's just life, the noise in the background, the pressure behind your eyes, the tension you feel when the day hasn't even started, but already feels heavy. You get used to it, to waking up with a jaw clenched from dreams you can't remember, to sipping coffee not because you enjoy it, but because it's the only thing that gets you moving, to living inside a body that feels wired and tired at the same time. And the truth is, most people don't associate this kind of stress with stroke. They think stroke comes from a sudden event, a big blow, a crisis. But I've seen something different. I've seen stroke come after years of someone carrying everything. Their work, their family, their regrets, their expectations, and never once setting them down. It's like holding a heavy bag. Not for minutes, but for months, years even. At first, you can still walk straight, still smile, but over time, your shoulders begin to curve inward, your breath gets shallower, your heart works harder, and your blood pressure rises quietly, like water behind a dam no one is watching. Stress isn't just a feeling, it's a chemical storm. It raises cortisol, tightens vessels, inflames the walls of your arteries, and over time, it reshapes the body from the inside out. There's a patient I remember, a woman in her early 50s. Sharp, always composed, the kind of person others leaned on. She never missed a meeting, never cried in public, never asked for help, and one morning, she couldn't speak, just like that. The words were there in her mind, but the bridge between brain and mouth had gone silent. I sat beside her hospital bed, and she looked at me with tears in her eyes. Not because of the stroke, but because she knew. She had ignored the warnings for years. The constant tension in her temples, the skipped meals, the late nights with a glowing laptop and a racing heart. She thought she was being strong, but her body had been pleading for rest, and when it finally got it, it was too late. This kind of story isn't rare. It's just not talked about often, because stress has become a badge, something we compare like scars, as if the person who suffers most wins some invisible prize, but your body doesn't care how successful you look. It only knows pressure. And over time, that pressure breaks things. The blood vessels in your brain are delicate. They're not built for chronic war. And when stress is your normal, your silent companion, it slowly chips away at those vessels until one day, a tiny rupture, a clot, a misfire in the network that keeps you whole. And suddenly, life is measured in syllables regained, in spoons lifted with shaking hands, in memories stitched back together, one moment at a time. So if you've been living in that silent storm, pushing through every ache, brushing off every sign, telling yourself just a little longer, this is for you, not as a warning, but as a whisper, a chance to listen before your body has to shout. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is put the bag down, even just for a while, and remember what it feels like to breathe fully, to sleep without armor, to live without racing. In the next part, we'll talk about a habit that hides in plain sight, not what you eat, but how you eat, and how it shapes the blood flowing through you each day. But for now, just sit quietly and ask yourself, what way have I been calling normal? Because awareness isn't weakness, it's the beginning of healing. It's easy to think food is just about hunger, a plate of something warm, something quick, something filling. But food is memory, it's comfort after a long day. It's the taste of childhood, the smell of home. And that's what makes it so complicated, because the same flavors that soothe us can also be the ones that slowly turn against us, not all at once, but grain by grain, spoon by spoon. Salt, it's not the villain people imagine. It doesn't shout when it enters the body. It whispers, softly tightening your arteries, raising your blood pressure little by little, until one day, a vessel in your brain can no longer hold its shape. Most people don't even realize how much salt they're carrying. It's in the canned soup that seems healthy, in the bread that feels harmless, in the sauces, the dressings, the takeout meals rushed through in cars or eaten in front of screens. It's not the salt you sprinkle, it's the salt already hidden, waiting. I once met a man who said, "I barely use salt," and he meant it. No shaker at the table, no chips, no pickles, But his blood pressure told another story. It was the frozen meals, the lunch meats, the convenience that filled the space where cooking used to live. He was a kind man, raised his kids, worked 2 jobs, rarely complained, and when his stroke came, it didn't feel fair, because he wasn't reckless. He was just tired, like so many others, doing the best they could with what they had. You see, that's the thing with food. It becomes habit long, before it becomes harm, and by the time the body starts to show signs, the headaches, the swelling, the pressure behind the eyes, we've already called those symptoms normal aging and moved on. But blood vessels are sensitive storytellers. They remember what we put into them. They carry not just nutrients, but the weight of every choice. And when those vessels stiffen, crack, or clog, it isn't sudden. It's the result of years of silent strain, and salt plays a leading role, not because it's evil, but because it's everywhere, and we've forgotten how to taste food without it. I sometimes ask patients, when was the last time you ate something fresh, not seasoned to impress, just real? And often, they pause, because even that question feels foreign. We've traded flavor for speed, and now our blood pressure is paying the price. But here's the quiet truth. The body can forgive, arteries can begin to relax, pressure can lower, clarity can return, if we learn to eat with intention again. Not fear, not obsession, just awareness. You don't have to become perfect, you just have to begin noticing what you reach for when you're tired, what you eat when no one's watching, what you've accepted as normal, not because it's good for you, but because it's convenient, and maybe, just maybe, that's the place where change begins. Not in some dramatic diet, but in the quiet moment when you look at your plate and ask, is this feeding my life, or is it quietly stealing from it? In the next part, we'll explore a habit that hides behind good intentions, the way we chase productivity, and in doing so, neglect one of the most powerful protectors of the brain, sleep. But for now, just breathe and think about the last meal you had, not with guilt, but with gentleness, because taste can be retrained, and so can the rhythm of your life. There's a certain pride people carry in being tired, like it means they're working hard, like it proves they're showing up for life, doing what has to be done. So they shrug off the yawns. They pour another cup of coffee. They say things like, I'll catch up on sleep this weekend, as if rest were something you could store like groceries on a shelf. But the body doesn't work that way. And the brain, that soft, miraculous command center, it's not a machine you can leave running forever. It needs darkness, stillness, and time to clean itself, to reset chemical balances, to repair tiny damages before they become disasters. Most people don't realize this, but sleep is not a luxury, it's medicine, and when you withhold it, night after night, year after year, you're not just making yourself tired, you're setting the stage for something far more dangerous. I remember a man in his 40s, corporate job, smart, driven, good sense of humor, but always tired, always working. 5 hours a night, 6 if he was lucky. He said he could function fine, and he did, until one morning, his hand couldn't grip his toothbrush. It was a small stroke, what we call a wake-up call. But the damage had been brewing for years, not from one night of bad sleep, but from hundreds of them, stacked quietly like unread messages in his body's inbox. You see, during deep sleep, the brain clears out waste proteins. It regulates blood pressure. It resets inflammatory systems. It does the invisible work that no pill can replace. And when you don't sleep enough, or well, your blood pressure stays elevated. Your blood vessels lose flexibility. Your stress hormones keep firing. And over time, The risk of stroke doesn't just increase, it becomes inevitable. But we live in a world that rewards exhaustion, that calls busyness ambition and rest laziness. So people keep pushing, keep staying up late with glowing screens, keep telling themselves they'll slow down later. When things settle, when the kids grow up, when the project's done. But the body doesn't wait, it doesn't care about your deadlines, it only knows imbalance. And it keeps the score whether you're paying attention or not. I sometimes tell patients, if you treated your heart the way you treat your phone, letting it recharge fully each night, you'd be surprised how much better you'd feel. And they laugh, but then they pause, because somewhere it hits home that maybe it's not just about being busy. Maybe it's about forgetting you deserve to rest, not just collapse from exhaustion, but truly rest on purpose without guilt. So tonight, maybe go to bed 30 minutes earlier, not as a sacrifice, but as a quiet offering to your future self, to the vessels in your brain that carry your thoughts, your memories, your very identity. Because you cannot outrun biology. You cannot perform your way past the need for sleep, and no title, no task, is worth losing the part of you that dreams, that heals, that remembers who you are. In the next part, we'll look at a habit that hides beneath modern life, the hours spent sitting still, unmoving, and how an activity silently weakens the flow that keeps your brain alive. But for now, let your shoulders drop, let your breath slow, and if you can, let the night hold you a little sooner than usual, not because you're tired, but because you're wise enough to know what rest truly protects. No one means to stop moving, it just sort of happens. You sit to answer a few emails, you scroll through your phone for a moment, you watch a show to relax, and before you know it, hours have passed, and your body has stayed in the same shape. Hunched, quiet, waiting, you tell yourself you'll stretch later. Go for a walk tomorrow, start exercising next week. But time slips like water through your fingers, and your body, once full of rhythm and motion, becomes something still, something stiff. The danger here isn't just in the muscles that grow weaker, it's in the blood that moves slower, in the vessels that stiffen from disuse, in the quiet formation of tiny clots. Little threats building quietly in your legs, your neck, waiting for the right moment to travel where they don't belong. I remember a man in his early 60s, thoughtful, quiet, retired not long ago. He used to be active, but after retirement, things slowed. He started spending more time indoors, sitting with books, with screens, with silence. He thought he was relaxing, and in some ways he was, but his body was asking for more movement, more flow, more breath. When the stroke came, it was sudden, but the cause had been years in the making, not from any injury or dramatic moment, but from the long, slow erosion of activity, like a river once full of life, now clogged with stillness. See, movement isn't just about burning calories or chasing a certain shape. It's about circulation, about blood carrying oxygen to the brain, about keeping the heart alert, the vessels elastic, the pressure balanced. Even a short walk after a meal can change the way your body processes stress, can lower your blood sugar, can prevent the quiet buildup of risk that forms when you stay too still for too long. But we live in a world that rewards mental effort over physical presence. We sit to work, we sit to rest, we sit to connect. And somewhere along the way, we forget that our bodies were built to move, to bend, to stretch, to walk with rhythm. This doesn't mean you need a gym membership or to run marathons. It means remembering the beauty of daily movement, the sacred act of standing, walking, breathing deeply into your chest, letting your legs remember what they were made to do. I often tell patients, You don't have to do much, just don't. Do nothing, because the human body, even in age, responds to motion. It thanks you for every step, for every moment you rise from a chair and remind your blood to keep flowing. And in doing so, you remind your brain that life is still moving, that you are not frozen, that your story continues, not just in thought, but in action. In the next part, we'll face the fifth and final habit, the one people avoid most. Not what they do, but what they don't know about their own health, and how ignoring it can cost them more than they ever imagined. But for now, if you've been sitting for a while, maybe pause, stand slowly, let your body stretch, let the blood flow again, not as a chore, but as a quiet act of remembering that you are alive, and your body was never meant to be still for this long. It's not that people don't care about their health. It's that they're too busy, too distracted, too used to putting themselves last. They tell themselves, "I'm fine." They feel the dizziness, the numbness, the pressure in the head, but brush it off. It's just stress. It'll pass. I'll get checked when things calm down. And so they go on, not out of ignorance, but out of habit. The habit of delay, of denial, of telling themselves that as long as they can still walk, still speak, still work, they must be okay. But stroke doesn't wait for convenience. It doesn't care about your schedule. It doesn't knock. It enters quietly, and by the time you recognize it, it may already be writing itself into your body in ways that don't erase easily. I once met a man, strong, quiet, practical. He hadn't seen a doctor in 10 years. Felt healthy enough, he said. Didn't want to be dramatic. Didn't want to waste anyone's time. He ignored the headaches, the tingling in his arm. Even the moment when his speech slurred for just a second. Brushed it off as dehydration. But it wasn't. It was a warning, a small one. The kind of moment that could have been reversed if caught in time. But like many people, he didn't go, didn't ask, didn't want to know. And when the stroke came, it took away half of his smile and all of his silence. I sat with him after, and he said something I never forgot. I thought not knowing would protect me from fear. And then he paused. But it didn't. It just took away my chance to change. You see, the most dangerous habit isn't what we eat, or how little we move. It's how easily we ignore ourselves, how quickly we learn to live with warning signs, until we stop hearing them altogether. When was the last time you checked your blood pressure? Not because someone told you to, but because you were curious. Because you respected the body carrying you through life. When was the last time you followed up on a symptom, not out of panic, but out of care? We check our cars more often than our own hearts. We track steps, but not our pulse. We upgrade our phones, but don't know if our arteries are narrowing in silence. Awareness is not anxiety, it's love. It's the kind of love that says, I'm not going to wait until something breaks. I will not treat myself as an afterthought, because this is your one body, the vessel that holds your stories, your memories, your children's voices, your quiet mornings and your laughter with old friends. It deserves your attention, not when it's too late, but now, in this ordinary quiet moment, in the final part of this journey. We'll gently gather everything we've seen, not to overwhelm you, but to remind you that change never begins with fear. It begins with noticing, with choosing, with the quiet power of saying, I want to keep living. Not just surviving, but truly living. And that begins with listening again, to the signs you once ignored, to the parts of you still waiting to be cared for. Strange, isn't it? How most people don't change because they're told to. They change because something inside them finally goes quiet and says, I don't want to live like this anymore. Not in fear, not in urgency, but in clarity. It happens in the softest of moments, standing in the kitchen after midnight, hearing your own breath, feeling the weight of years on your shoulders, and realizing you've been carrying yourself too roughly, too distracted, too far from your own body. We've talked about habits, yes, the salt, the stress, the sleepless nights, the long hours sitting still, the silence around your own symptoms. But beneath all of that, what we've really been talking about is noticing what you've been ignoring, noticing how long you've called exhaustion normal, noticing how many times you've told your body, not now, and how far that not now has carried you away from yourself. But here's the thing, the clock hasn't run out, not yet. And that's the part no one says loud enough, that awareness, even now, even here, still holds power, still changes things. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You don't need to become a new person by morning. You just need to begin listening again, to the pulse in your chest, to the heaviness in your legs, to the still, small voice inside that says, you were made for more than just surviving. I've sat across from people after strokes, and do you know what? Most of them say, they don't talk about work or money or unfinished goals. They talk about moments, the walk they wish they'd taken, the call they didn't make, the time they pushed through instead of pausing. And then I've sat across from people who caught it just in time, who changed the way they ate, who began walking every morning, who took their blood pressure seriously, who listened when their body whispered instead of waiting for it to scream. They didn't change because they were scared. They changed because they remembered that life is fragile. Yes, but also forgiving, that the body wants to heal, that the brain, even wounded, still searches for light. So wherever you are in your story, know this. It's not too late. You are not too far gone. The habits that once harmed you can be unlearned. The damage that feels permanent may still be softened by care, and your next decision, the one you make quietly, without anyone watching, might just be the one that saves your life. Not because someone told you to change, not because a video warned you, but because you paused long enough to ask, what kind of life do I want to protect? And if this spoke to you, if somewhere along the way you recognized a piece of yourself in these words, then pass it on, not out of fear, but out of love, because someone out there is still living too fast, still missing the signs, still believing. They have forever, but you know better now, and that is where healing begins.